Hey there folks, welcome back to another episode of Marvelous Videos. We're digging into the curious case of Judge Dredd Mega City 1, the TV series, a project that should have transformed the dark and dystopian world of Mega City 1, but somehow got lost in development hell. From early excitement and big-name rumors to mysterious delays, cancellations, and wild speculation about Amazon revivals, this series became more of a mystery than a reality. What went wrong, and is there any hope it'll return? Stick around as we piece together the fragmented story of this unrealized TV adaptation. Let's get into it. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origin and hype, the announcement of Mega City 1. So let's rewind to 2017. That was the year Judge Dredd Mega City 1 was officially announced. And honestly, it caught a lot of people by surprise. For decades, Judge Dredd had been one of those cult sci-fi icons. It was gritty, brutal, and satirical, mostly known through the original British comic 2000 AD, as well as a few video games and a couple of film adaptations. You had the 1995 Judge Dredd movie with Stallone, which didn't exactly light up the box office, and then the 2012 Dredd film, which actually got a decent critical reception, but never really turned into the franchise revival fans were hoping for. So, when news dropped about a full-on TV series, expectations were cautiously optimistic. What's interesting is how the show was presented at first. Instead of going the obvious route of putting Dredd in the center of everything, because, of course, that's what most adaptations would do, it was pitched as an ensemble piece. The plan was to explore the sprawling mess of Mega City 1 through the eyes of multiple judges. Think of it as a broader, grittier look into how this dystopian nightmare runs from day to day. No single hero or anti-hero, just a bunch of officers trying to survive the system they uphold. That approach actually made a lot of sense because the original comics were more than just Dredd doling out justice with no questions asked. They were sharp, cynical, and often political. The judges were products of an authoritarian system, and most of the time, they were just as trapped by it as the citizens they policed. So framing it as an ensemble gave the creators space to show the cracks in that system from different perspectives. You could have a rookie just trying to stay clean, a veteran questioning whether it's worth it anymore, or even some morally ambiguous characters who represent just how twisted the whole thing is. The initial reaction was mixed, but leaning toward intrigued. The announcement hit a lot of sci-fi and comic book outlets first, and there was a definite buzz. Fans of the original 2000 AD material were cautiously optimistic that this time, maybe, someone would finally do the source justice. After all, it's got decades of rich world building to pull from, full of gangs, mutants, political conspiracies, and of course, towering doses of brutal authoritarianism. But there was also an undercurrent of skepticism. Could a TV show really capture the satirical bite of the comic without falling into the trap of just being gritty for the sake of it? It wasn't clear yet. The ensemble approach appeared to have fascinated industry insiders, particularly since it opened up the possibilities of more intensive storytelling. The series could venture into other levels of Mega City 1 rather than forcing all the plot elements into the life of Dredd. It was a dark, political, character-oriented, non-spectacle tone that they had promised. The creators discussed at length the moral compromises judges face, the system's inherent corruption, and the personal costs of maintaining order. But that made people wonder, how dark is too dark? And could they balance that with enough action to keep a broader audience hooked? At that point, no one knew if it would work, but the potential was there. Mega City 1 is one of the richest dystopian settings in sci-fi comics, but adapting it is challenging because it involves holding a mirror to authoritarianism and a society gone wrong. Whether the show could pull that off, well, that's where things got complicated. Unrealized production. What happened behind the scenes? The more you dig into the behind the scenes of Judge Dredd Mega City 1, the more it feels like trying to assemble a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. At first, things looked promising. After the 2022 announcement, IM Global seemed all in, partnering up with Rebellion Developments, the company that owns 2000 AD, and by extension, the rights to Judge Dredd. Rebellion has always been protective of their material, so the fact that they were involved directly was a good sign. They weren't handing the property over to just any studio willing to cash in on the dystopian sci-fi trend. Instead, it seemed like a project made by fans for fans. Production was supposed to kick off around 2023, and early reports suggested things were progressing smoothly. Rebellion's CEO, Jason Kingsley, made a few public comments about the series having significant ambition and how it was designed to lean heavily into the world-building of Mega City 1. He was clearly proud of the project, making it sound like they were aiming for something more than just another grim future action show. The idea was to delve deeply into the political complexities, explore the judge's personal struggles, and, most importantly, give the setting the respect it deserved. But then, everything started slowing down. There are a couple of obvious culprits. First, the pandemic. By 2022, the industry was still feeling the aftershocks of COVID-19. Film and TV productions everywhere were dealing with delays, supply chain issues, and skyrocketing costs for even the simplest of things, like props, sets, and crew travel. Mega City 1 was never going to be a low-budget affair. Think towering urban sprawl, endless CGI mutants, and oppressive interiors full of grimy tech. That kind of world doesn't build itself, and the pandemic didn't help either. What's murkier is exactly what happened between IM Global and Rebellion. IM Global was involved as one of the production companies, and at first, they seemed pretty invested in getting things moving. But somewhere along the way, reports started hinting at financial troubles. There were murmurs of studio changes, rights complications, and possibly shifting priorities. One source mentioned that internal restructuring at IM Global threw a wrench into the whole thing, though nothing was ever confirmed. Whatever the details were, the enthusiasm started to fade as practical hurdles piled up. Jason Kingsley kept updating fans now and then, which always sparked a little hope. At one point, he mentioned that production was still on track and Rebellion was fully committed. But as time passed, those updates became fewer, more vague, and not very reassuring in a way that made you wonder if they were covering for some trouble. The language shifted from excited optimism to careful neutrality. Another issue appears to have been financial concerns. Mega City 1 isn't exactly a cheap universe to build, especially if you want to do it right. Rumors suggest that the production budget continued to balloon as the pandemic inflated costs across the industry. CGI alone would have eaten a huge chunk of it. Then there's the political complexity of the story, where Rebellion wasn't interested in simplifying the source material into easy action beats, which likely made it a harder sell to investors looking for guaranteed returns. By the time 2024 rolled around, the series seemed to slip into development hell. No official cancellation, but no sign of actual filming either. Industry insiders no longer mentioned it, and the public updates were almost non-existent. In retrospect, Mega City 1 was caught between ambition and reality. A great idea surrounded by good intentions, but crushed by timing, costs, and a changing entertainment landscape. Maybe one day someone will try again, but for now, it remains one of those what-could-have-been stories in the sci-fi world. Karl Urban's involvement. Fact versus rumor. One of the most tantalizing questions surrounding Judge Dredd Mega City 1 was whether Karl Urban would return as Dredd. If you follow sci-fi closely, you probably know him from the 2012 Dredd movie, a performance many fans still consider the best live-action version of the character. So when the TV series was announced, speculation immediately swirled around Urban's involvement. At first, the chatter came mostly from industry rumors. Various outlets started reporting that Karl Urban was in talks to reprise his role as Dredd for the series. Some sources were vague, others a bit more pointed, hinting that Urban's name was heavily attached to the project. But here's the catch. Nothing official ever came from Rebellion or the production companies. No announcements, no casting confirmations. What makes this interesting is that Karl Urban himself addressed the rumors multiple times, though never definitively. In interviews around that period, he seemed interested, even enthusiastic at times. He admitted that the role of Judge Dredd was one he was proud of, and that revisiting that universe could be fun, especially if the story went in a direction that respected the source material. But he also never committed. His tone was careful, more like a, if it happens, great, but I have other things going on. And that's where things start to fall apart, or at least get complicated. By the time Megacity 1 was moving toward production, Urban was deep into filming The Boys on Amazon. His role as Billy Butcher was not only a major commitment, but had skyrocketed in popularity. Given the success of The Boys, it seemed unlikely that his schedule would have any wiggle room for another dystopian role. In fact, some industry insiders suggested that scheduling conflicts alone made his participation almost impossible. There were also whispers about money, how Urban's involvement would have required a significant increase in the show's budget, which, at a time when Megacity 1 was already struggling to secure solid funding, sounds plausible. Rebellion wasn't exactly rolling in cash, and neither was the production. Would they gamble a large chunk of the budget on a big-name actor whose availability was uncertain? That seems doubtful. Then there's the tone of the project itself. Urban's portrayal of Dredd in the 2012 film leaned into the violent, brutal aspects of the character, and that version had a cult following precisely because of its unflinching approach. But Megacity 1 was meant to be a layered, ensemble-driven political drama. In some interviews, Urban hinted that if the series focused solely on action or missed the source's satirical edge, he wouldn't be interested. So even if the schedule lined up, there was no guarantee he'd sign on unless the script matched his expectations. What makes this all more fascinating is that by late 2023, any talk of Urban being attached seemed to vanish. Official statements remained silent. Jason Kingsley from Rebellion never confirmed or denied it. His updates focused entirely on world building and the Judge's ensemble, with no mention of returning stars. So where does that leave us? Karl Urban was likely approached, or at least considered, during the early stages. There's enough public and industry chatter to suggest serious discussions happened, but a combination of scheduling conflicts, budget concerns, and perhaps creative differences made it unlikely to move forward. His involvement always felt like a hopeful rumor more than a concrete plan. Cancellation rumors, Amazon, and recent updates. By the time 2024 rolled around, something strange started happening. Rumors about Judge Dredd Megacity 1 shifted direction. No longer was the talk about production delays or funding struggles. Instead, whispers began circulating that Amazon might pick up the project. The speculation made a lot of sense, at least on paper. Why Amazon? Well, around that time, The Boys was a massive hit. Amazon had shown they were interested in dark, morally complicated takes on superhero and dystopian stories. So naturally, the idea of Amazon swooping in to revive a gritty, ensemble-driven Dredd series felt like a perfect fit. Some reports even went as far as to suggest that the team behind The Boys was involved, with key producers potentially attached to bring Megacity 1 to life. But there was never any official announcement. No press release from Amazon, no confirmed deal, just a cascade of industry murmurs, social media speculation, and vague sources say articles that didn't really point to anything concrete. At first, it was tempting to believe that something was in the works. After all, it made sense from a content strategy point of view. Amazon loves expansive universes and dark storytelling. It fit their playbook. Still, when you dig deeper, the trail gets cold pretty fast. Jason Kingsley, the CEO of Rebellion Developments, was surprisingly direct about it in a few interviews. At one point, he flat out denied any involvement with Amazon. He said something along the lines of how there's no deal or any development with Amazon, which was a pretty clear statement coming from someone in charge of the intellectual property. The thing that makes the situation more confusing is that these denial statements came after the rumors had already taken on a life of their own. Industry blogs, fan forums, and entertainment websites kept talking as if the Amazon revival was just around the corner. But Rebellion didn't leave much room for interpretation. Kingsley seemed determined to shut down the speculation entirely. His tone wasn't defensive exactly, but firm, as though he wanted to make sure everyone understood the series was still in limbo, Not dead, but definitely not being rebooted by Amazon. Why were the rumors so persistent then? People saw this as an opportunity for a juicy crossover, a major streaming platform, a dark cult favorite IP, and the involvement of high-profile creators like those behind The Boys. It was almost too good to ignore. And once the idea got out there, no amount of official denials seemed able to stop it. You know how it goes. Speculation becomes semi-fact just by being repeated enough. As of the latest updates, there's no sign of any active development, Amazon or otherwise. No pilot orders, no casting news, no production schedules. Rebellion seems focused on other projects, including video game expansions and 2000 AD related material. Jason Kingsley has remained consistent, reiterating that Judge Dredd Mega City 1 is not in active production and no other companies are involved. It leaves us in a weird middle ground. Was there ever serious interest from Amazon? Maybe. Was there a point where discussions happened behind closed doors? Possibly, though none of it materialized into anything public or official. Right now, all we have are rumors that never turned into reality and carefully worded denials meant to set the record straight. So if you've been wondering whether we'll ever see Mega City 1 on the small screen, the current answer seems to be not anytime soon. Whatever ambition sparked this whole thing appears stalled indefinitely. The Amazon revival was probably wishful thinking at best, and outright fiction at worst. Where is it now? Possibility of future revival. So where does that leave Judge Dredd Mega City 1 now? If you're expecting some dramatic, "it's officially canceled" headline, you're going to be disappointed. There hasn't been an official cancellation from Rebellion Developments, nor any solid announcement that the project is dead forever. But neither has there been any sign of real progress toward production. What we do know is that the rights to Judge Dredd Mega City 1 are still held by Rebellion. Jason Kingsley, Rebellion's CEO, hasn't sold off the IP or transferred it to another studio. In fact, in a few interviews over the past year, he's reiterated that the project hasn't been scrapped entirely. He's remained careful with his words, never promising a revival, but also never ruling it out, which sounds like they're keeping the option open, maybe waiting for the right moment or the right partner. As for the script, there's no public record of finished scripts being leaked or confirmed. Industry insiders suggest there were several drafts in development, particularly in the early stages when the show is shaping up to be more ensemble-driven. But after the delays and funding issues kicked in, those drafts apparently sat on a shelf. Whether Rebellion still considers them usable or has abandoned them altogether isn't clear. They're probably holding on to them, at least for now. You don't just toss out material that's expensive and that's close to production, especially when the property has such a loyal fan base. Then there are the newer rumors that keep popping up. Most notably, the Taika Waititi connection. If you've been following the entertainment world recently, you'll know that Waititi, the director behind Thor Ragnarok and Jojo Rabbit, is attached to direct a Judge Dredd movie reboot. Officially, that's a completely separate project from Mega City 1, but it raises interesting questions. Could the movie reboot somehow impact the TV series? Would a successful Dredd film make studios more willing to invest in a sprawling, episodic adaptation of the world? There's no direct evidence linking the two projects, though. Waititi's movie is being handled as its own entity, with no public indication that Rebellion is involved in both. Still, it wouldn't be surprising if the success or failure of that film ends up being a major deciding factor in the TV show's future. If the movie turns out to be a hit, suddenly everyone will remember the unfinished series. On the other hand, if it flops, the whole IP might get shelved for good. As of the most recent updates, there's no announcement of any new director or major player stepping in to revive Mega City 1. No official studios expressing renewed interest, no casting rumors, no pilots ordered. But Rebellion still owns the rights, which means they could, theoretically, pick it up at any point. The industry is unpredictable like that. It's also worth considering that Rebellion seems focused elsewhere lately. Their attention has shifted towards expanding 2000 AD in video games and other media. That makes sense. Video games are a lower-risk way to monetize the property, especially when budgets for TV or film are so massive. In the end, the whole thing feels like a story stuck in pause. The ambition was there, the rights are still with Rebellion, the scripts are probably still somewhere in development, but without a major studio backing it, without clear funding or a director ready to take it on, it's hard to see it happening anytime soon. For now, Mega City 1 remains one of those sci-fi projects suspended between what could have been and what might still be. Marvelous verdict. And that's where we leave Judge Dredd Mega City 1, a project full of ambition that got lost in a tangle of delays, financial troubles, and industry shifts. Despite rumors of Amazon revivals or big-name directors stepping in, nothing concrete ever materialized. The rights still sit with Rebellion, and while the scripts likely remain untouched, the series now feels like a story on indefinite pause. Could it rise again? Maybe spurred by the success of other adaptations? Maybe. But for now, Mega City 1 remains one of those intriguing what-if projects. What's your take? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, stay curious and stay marvelous. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.